everybody, welcome. Rhonda with the City of Tampa Visual Arts team. I'm setting up to start a demo, and as I'm sitting here setting up, I kind of had some things that I wanted to remind everybody. Um, when we're in the studio, we wash our hands in the clay sink. We have a clay trap. If you guys are doing this at home, remember to wash your hands outside. Uh, I literally set up, was getting my hands in clay, and went right to the kitchen and froze because I don't have a clay trap. And makeshift, I cut the top of a plastic milk container, so I had a larger container. That way I don't have to run out. I don't have to get a bucket. I just literally cut the top of it off with just a serrated knife. It went through pretty quickly. So rinse your hands off in that bucket, toss that bucket outside. Make sure you do not let that clay water go down the sink. Very, very important. So I just wanted to start with that before I forgot. I felt like it was really important for you guys to know that. A lot of times we just kind of take that clay sink for granted. So basically the clay sink at the studio, clay settles to the bottom, water goes to the top, and there's a hole at the top and the water flows over, and then the clean water trickles out, and that's what goes into the drain. The actual clay, if it would just go right into that P-trap, it would clog. So moral of the story, wash your hands before, like in a bucket of water, before you wash your hands in the sink in your house. If you can rinse outside with a hose and a bucket, you are in good shape. Even those sinks in the garage, those utility sinks, nope, those don't count. Got to go outside unless you have a clay trap on it. So that's my tip of the day before we actually get into the demo. So I'm going to stop here, set up for the demo, and then we'll get going. So we're going to make a fairy door today. If you go online, you go to Pinterest, and you look up fairy door, you're going to see a million trillion different ways to do these. You can decorate them to make them look like your front door. You can make them very whimsical. You can make them crooked. You can make them round, square, whatever you want. You can add little things, little doormats, little teeny weeny little windows. But essentially, the lighting is kind of terrible right now. We're going to fix that soon. So this is the pattern. It just looks like a door that you would see basically out of Shrek. And I've got texture patterns, texture things, texture rollers, things that I've bought online, super duper cheap. Textures for cakes. Cake fondant is going to be a really great go-to place for that. These are some of the ones. Years ago, we had gotten these for summer camp, and you got little brick. So these are actually for cakes. I guess, Yellow Brick Road. Oh, that's a Yellow Brick Road one too. And here's one that's kind of, you can kind of see the pattern on it. Maybe, no, bright, that light's too bright. But anyway, so there's brick patterns and all that kind of stuff. The other thing are these really rubbery fondant molds. This was a sheet that was a wooden floor. It was supposed to look like a wooden floor, and it just looked stupid when you pushed it individually and rolled it. It made the floor very uneven if you were calling it a floor. So what I did was I literally cut them up into little planks. So they're individual planks, and they have different wood grain patterns on them. So now I can control where I want the pattern, how I want the pattern for texture. And I made a little roller stamp that looks kind of, looks like stone once you roll it. It literally was a broom, like one of those Fuller Brush antique brooms that my mom had laying around in the garage, the bristle brushes, and I just stuck it in, and it made little holes. So when you roll it into the clay, it looks like stones. So these are kind of some of the things we're going to use. First of all, I want to show you how to make the pattern. So, like I said, I like the ones that kind of look like the little doors out of Robin Hood or Shrek. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half. I kind of want mine even. So I made that little arch. So when I open it up, it creates that shape. And as a study, I just kind of drew what I wanted on there. And the only thing that's really important, I think, is like that keystone. So you kind of angle them in so that it's even, and then the rest, it doesn't matter. The rest were just like random hash marks. Nothing strategically perfect. It's a fairy door. It's going to go outside. It doesn't matter. We're not trying to be perfect here. We want it to look as rugged and not uniform as possible. So from that, I created a little cardboard cutout. So now this is my template. And I have so much cardboard from laying around. Amazon seems to be my new best friend. And they're at the door every day with something. Whether, I don't know, a table for my mom, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I'm constantly ordering stuff. So anyway, so I'm going to use this. This is my original one, my first, and you can see how I traced it, and it just kind of went right through. So after I did it once, I knew I liked it. If you're only going to do something once, do a paper pattern. But if you know you're going to keep it, do something a little bit more permanent. You can get plastic placemats from the Dollar Tree, trace those out, cut them out. Those are plastic. Those will last. You know, if you do have your wax and you dip your pots in wax, if you have the hot pot, a lot of times I'll take paper and I'll just dip it in the paraffin. It makes it waterproof. It's still bendable. Or you can get tar paper. I think it sounded like I said guitar paper, but just tar paper from like the hardware store. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to switch cameras, and then we're going to kind of view from up above, and we'll break away for that and see what happens. All right, so I have a little lump of clay. It's kind of thick, which is fine. And for home use, I don't have a slab roller. I do have like this little mallet that on the floor, I will kind of tap it. And then that's what gets it flat. That gets it a little bit more uniform. And from there, I move on to dowel rods. And these are 3/8 thick. And I want to make sure that my piece will fit. So I already know that it'll fit. And since this is going outside, I don't want it to be too thin. I need it to be a little bit rugged, but I want it to be somewhat even and compressed. So I choose to use a dowel rod from the hardware store, and I like the square ones. A lot of times people will use round ones for their measuring, but this, I know they're flat and I know it's not going to roll funny. Sometimes they roll back and forth. So I'm just going to roll, and you can see it's starting to move. It's going to do its little thing. There we go. Always remove, even though we're adding texture, I don't want my textures to fight each other. So I am going to smooth both sides out. Look, part of my mom's broken cell phone holder is on there. I don't need that. So we're going to smooth that out. Also, smoothing this gives us a chance to see where potential air bubbles are. If you're wedging your own clay at home, there's always that chance. Even the reclaim that goes through the de-airing bugger, there's still always a chance there's going to be air in there. So we always assume You want to fix that. Assume there's air. All right, so if you are using just the paper piece, you can come in and then trace. If you have one of these burnishing that has like a little ball tip on the end of it, you can go in and just kind of like line it up. Right? That's going to give you a dimension and kind of show you where you need to trace. I'm going to lay this down. This is my more permanent template. I'm going to try and get, so this we know is wide enough to become like a little walkway or a little entrance. You'll see what it makes. It'll make more sense when you see it. Maybe I'll, before in the editing, I'll plop the image of the complete one up front so it makes more sense. I'm extremely dull. So I'm on a canvas board and I'm drawing. If I had a really sharp X-Acto knife, I would have cut through my canvas by now, but this thing is so dull, it doesn't even have a point, but it's still my favorite thing. So a lot of times we just crumple all of our scraps and we just throw them away. Leave them as they are. Don't crinkle them, don't crumple them. We might use them and leave it in a whole piece. I see a lot of people will just fold it up and throw it off to the side. We might use it, so leave it. Come in, get some water. I'm just going to round this out. Round both sides. The more finishing you do as you go, the less you'll have to fix in the long run. I mean, I could have left that jagged, but why? Right. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could lane that over and trace around and make that little line. Or I can just come in with, this is a handmade tool. It's very dull at this end, so it allows me to make burnished lines really nice, right? So it's kind of like a really thick pin tool that's really dull and rounded. So I'm going to come in and just trace that shape. Right. I'm going to come up right just about that key. That keystone. Anybody that's built a kiln, an arch kiln, knows that that keystone is so important. So I'm going to make that deep enough, but I don't want to cut all the way through. I just want there to be a deep enough to where there's a shadow, so it tricks you into thinking that the door could actually just open. And I have a little, just a little brush and go down in that little crack and burnish. I don't want there to be a lot of water. If you notice, I'm not picking up a lot of water. I'm using my sponge on there to kind of load the brush with water so there's not this oversaturation. If water gets in there and it stands in that little crack, it's going to deteriorate your piece, but I just want that to be burnished down. And while it's soft, I'm going to come in and on every little mark that I made, I'm just going to round it out. All right, so I'm going to take that roller stamp. You can see it that well. It's the one with the fuller brush thing that I use, and I'm just going to roll right around. Now, by pushing on this, I might undo some of that, I guess, grout lines, I guess you could call it, but those spaces in between. But that's fine. I can go back and redefine it. I'm going to do it on an angle to kind of round that out. Now, if you don't have a texture roller, go out in the yard. If you have rocks in your garden, I don't have a garden, so I had to make my own rock texture. Or you could get that, get a bristle brush, push in it. Just be creative. A piece of like mulch, a piece of bark will do it too. You don't have to have it exactly like that. And come back in. Alright, I could really spend a lot of time on that, but I'm not gonna. Okay, this piece I'm gonna use as an add-on. I'm not actually going to try and do the texture that way. I'm gonna roll out some clay really, really thin and go from there. I'm gonna use these different texture wood grain patterns. I kind of like this one. I don't know if you can see it. It has like the eye, the grain of the wood there. And what's nice about it is I can just kind of push and mold and do whatever. So I'm going to start and just push down. And then if I have to, I can kind of fake that side. So now, hopefully you can see that pretty decent. And I'm going to come back in again with that really thick burnished needle tool. I'm just going to come back in, make some lines, make some planks. Isn't that great? I'm sure you guys can hear my neighbors in the background revving up their motorcycles. They're always out there. They race motorcycles on the weekends. So they test them out during the week. See, and I'm making them a little like warpled. Is warpled a word? I don't really know. But I kind of like that. Just make them look perfect. Right? So now I'm going to toss this off to the side. And I'm going to work on, and this is one of the reasons I say to leave these whole and don't crumple them up. I'm going to roll all this out. I'm going to roll it out fairly thin. Because I want it to just be a decorative piece on there. I don't want it to fight anything. Right. If I have my little pony roller handy, that would be ideal, but I don't have a pony roller right in front of me. So this tool here is pretty even, and I'm just going to use it as my little mini roller. It's going to be fine. I'm going to smooth all this out. Don't want to fight that texture of the canvas. Canvas marks are not your friend. like have a sign up in the studio that says friends don't let friends leave canvas marks on their clay. Right. So there's that word again. So I'm going to do some more texture on here. It's kind of okay if you leave indentations where each plank starts and stops. It makes it maybe look a little bit more realistic. Back to this one, that's still my favorite. That little eye in there. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna cut strips. It's gonna be about the same thickness. It's about. I'm gonna bring this back over. I'll lay this down. And then trace where that door is and cut it away. So now I have that little door brace. You can kind of see my little line there. So I'm just going to get rid of that with the brush. Sometimes we can use the brush as the extension of our finger without messing up the, there we go. You want to even put little dots near the little break marks. So they kind of look like nail markings. There we go. Okay, now we can move on to the handle. So I'm going to roll out just a little clay. Basically, it's going to look like a dog bone. Kind of. Little dog bone. So if this has kind of got a little bit of rough texture, it's kind of okay because it should look something like wrought iron. So very kind of not exact maybe. Just grab any old thing. Like this is the bottom of a tool. Round that out. And I'm going to push this over my finger. Almost looks like a little inchworm. Little inchworm. Right? So let's Add a little clay, a little water to the clay. If you notice it started to crack a little bit, I'm just going to reinforce it. Kind of compress. Dropped it. Alright. My little brush go. So roll that back and forth. And then I'm going to come back in with some really teeny weeny little balls of clay. Make little tiny rivets. Small, you want them small, but you also want them uniform. And a lot of times when it's this small, they dry out super, super fast. So by the time you start rolling them around, you come back to them in 10 seconds, they're pretty crusty. So we want to make sure that they stay hydrated while we're working with them, because we want them to squish. I'm going to use this little brayer, little ball on the bottom. I don't know if it's a brayer, what do they call it? Not like a burnisher, but embosser. I think people use it to emboss clay, or not clay, but like if you're doing cards. Clean that up just a little bit so it doesn't look so weak. But it also gives me an extra way to attach and to kind of push when it's that small. All right. So there's the handle. So now we can go back to our front piece. So if we think about it, we think this is kind of like the little door. So I'm saying if this here is jagged, it's going to be fine, because it's going to look, you can even make a little welcome mat for it. So I'm going to keep this kind of jagged, but I'm going to make sure it doesn't crack. If there's like a spot here, when it starts to crack, when it starts to dry, it's going to pull away from itself here, and the crack can actually become worse. So I'm going to make sure that that's not open for that. I'm going to make sure it stays together a little bit better. So it looks very rocky, so I'm going to just kind of leave it, but even old ferry doors and the stoop at the ferry door is going to be very worn, and if it's worn, it's going to be smooth. So we're going to play off of that idea. Alright. So I'm going to take the one that looks like cobblestone. And slowly push it in. I don't want to push too heavy at the edge, so I'm not getting a total square line. See how it makes that squarish line? I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over, and I'm only going to push where I know I need texture. And over here. So get rid of these weird lines. Just gonna kind of go over them back and forth with my brush. Smooth them out a little bit. And make those little stones. Or cobble-like. There we go. Be a little bit more fastidious. I would really go back in and kind of get rid of all of that. I can, looks kind of cute. All right. So take this, leave it flat, and then I'm going to draw a little line where they meet. Sit that back down and push from behind. I might want this to set up just a little bit more, but it's okay. We're gonna make it work. Alright, so now we have our little fairy door and our little fairy cobblestone little beginning thing there. Alright, so for now, we're just going to let this dry. Everything seems to be staying attached pretty good and smooth. Last little bit out on the back. we'll go from there. So there is our little fairy door entrance. Take care, and we'll see you soon.